Hey, so at some point you're going to decide that you're tired of using the color straight out of the can and you want to create a custom ink. Well, there's a really easy way of doing that by either adding a little bit of white or a little bit of black to your inks to make a custom color that is really going to make your print pop. Okay, so to get started, what you're going to need, some kind of palette knife, because you're going to need to be able to get the ink out of the can onto your inking plate, and then also you're going to need to mix it up. So I have some plastic Scotty knives here that I'll be using for this demo, but if you don't have those, you can always use, this is like a Bondo putty knife kind of thing. You could use putty knives that you can find at the hardware store, or if you have old cards lying around. So like I got a movie card, a coffee card, and an old Disney passport, so these I can use as well. These are nice because they are flexible and they allow you to they give you a nice handhold and you can mix inks up. So any one of those you can use. I also have an inking palette here. On the back side of the inking palette is a piece of contact paper so that I can see the colors as I'm mixing them. That's really important. This is just a piece of plexiglass, and then of course I have white and I have the color that I'm going to mix. The other thing that you're going to need while you're doing this is I'm going to be using white paper today so I can see the colors that I'm mixing really well when I take a swatch sample and draw it down onto the paper. I'm using white, but whatever paper color you're using when you decide on your print project, you should always do the color swatches on that color of paper, just so you can get a good representation of, or a good idea of what those colors will look like on that paper. Okay, so first of all, when you're mixing tints, which is adding pure white to the pure color, you always want to keep in mind the intensity of the color that you're mixing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a small amount of white, and then I'm going to add red into it. That way I can, that will be an efficient use of the ink. Instead of trying to make this big blob of ink, red ink, different lighter tints, I'm going to just add red to the white. All I need is just a little bit of red for this project. Red is such an intense color that that's all that I need. And here is some white. When you first open up a white, you'll have you may have a piece of cardboard in there that helps to hold down the skin, and then a little plastic skin. When you are taking ink out of your cans, you want to make sure that you scrape along the top and you don't jab your palette knife into the ink, because it's oil ink. After time it will dry out and leave and then it'll dry out and leave a skin on top of it, and if you poke the palette knife into it, then that introduces air into the middle of your ink and it'll start to dry out from that space. Here I have my white, and my white, I'm just going to kind of work it a little bit. When it comes out of the can, it's a little stiff, and just by working it around and getting it, smashing it, the friction and the heat helps to warm it up a little bit and starts to loosen it a little bit, loosen up the ink. Still a little stiff, but I think for this process right here, it's going to be just fine. I don't want it to run all over. Alright, so then I'm going to take a little bit of this red ink, just a tiny bit, punch it in right there, and start working that red in. And you can see I have this really beautiful sort of bubblegum kind of pastel pink here. Now you can see I have ink on my palette knife here. And I have some, now you can see I have some ink on my palette knife up here that hasn't been mixed in, and some on the back side. So I want to make sure that I really flatten that out and get as much of that ink off as possible so that I can get the best sense of what color this ink is going to be. You can imagine that if I wasn't using white into here, say I was mixing two dark colors and I had just the right color of violet, let's say, and I had some extra blue ink on top of that and it was really dark and got pushed into that, how it could really impact the color and all of your hard, you know, and it may be something you don't want, likely, and so all of your hard work in mixing that could be destroyed there. So after I'm just kind of moving some things out of the way. This is going to be the first tint that I use here, okay? So I'm just going to move this off to the side a little bit. All right, so I'm just looking at the front and the back side of this paper just to make sure that I have the right side of the paper. I'm going to be working on the front side here. You can tell it's a front side because of the decal edge here. It has a harsh edge on it, and this is the front side. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of that little piece of white, and I'm going to take and I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to work this red just a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of red on my palette knife, and I'm going to do what's called a drawdown. So I'm just going to put my palette knife flat edge and just pull it down on the paper, and I'm going to do that a couple times. This is going to give me an idea of what that red ink is going to look like on the paper there. Alright, then I'm going to do the same with the pink. So I'm just going to take that and draw down. So now I've created, this is the original hue, and here is the tint with the white. And so I'm going to continue to do this. I'm going to create 4 more so that I have a nice tint scale here. All right, so what I'll be doing here is moving the paper off to the side, moving my mixing plate back out here into my workspace, and then I'm going to mix in a little more red. So I'm just going to take a little bit more right there, and then I'm going to work that red into the pink that I've already created. There you can see we have this really nice tone, tint gradient. Here we go, from adding white into it the whole way across. Okay, that's all there is to creating tints. It's a really easy way to create custom colors. You know, mine here, I did 5, but there's nothing to say that you can do 10 or 15 or even 20 of them if you wanted to.